Hi everyone, it's so nice to see all of you for a heart to heart again. Hi Leah,
Hi, Leia.
and today we're gonna talk about something that Eileen and I have discussed quite a few times, and I think it's a topic that is very personal and that is difficult to talk about in public because I think it's quite painful, both physically and mentally. And it's somehow the ignorance and due to ignorance how we are treated and the result of it. And specifically, we decided to talk about what happened to us in hospitals. And I'm sure a lot of you have many stories to share, but I'd like to hear about a couple of yours, Ilea, um, that, you know, have made you feel insecure about hospitals.
I think that since the one that I'm thinking of is seems like the only one that I should tell, like even if I just tell one instead of a few, I'm going to have the same ones as a lot of you. Just healthcare providers not buying your story seems a little out there. All those kind of things we're probably could have a lot of commonality on and toast to, the danger of ignorance. it, and I'm joking because it's a really when you're affected by somebody that's ignorant on the subject. We're talking here of disease, but I think it's important we distinguish that we're talking about ignorance, not stupidity or intellect, but just lack of knowledge on the subject. That's all. And so when you're talking about a rare disease, that's going to be ignorance territory, because most people are not doctors, and further on they're not neurologists and then neuromuscular specialists and then maybe neuroimmunologists. So there's not going to be many people probably that have these type of very severe dramatic episodes in healthcare facilities, and I worked in them for many years, so I've seen the really some crazy, ugly, weird stuff. And it happened to me in the most horrifying fashion, but then it also had repercussions. So I'm thinking to tell just this one very important one. I was lucky enough to get expert opinions, have my treatment move along sort of quickly. Um, I was 30, and by 31, I had a rapport with my dialysis nephrology team, with the nurses. They were invested in my having plasmapheresis because I was doing so poorly so suddenly that it became that kind of situation. So at first, I got essential lines and I worked hiding them and blah, blah, blah. Then it came out that instead of central lines, and I had the complications that you can have, I had three central. So one infection. I also had where there was a clot. So here's a scar that this is just scar tissue. That's from the tunneling of the central line. That's how long you could imagine. And this is years ago that I had that. So
Mhm.
yeah, and it's, and I know enough to know, central lines for me mean in my background, ICU, gonna die, gotta talk to the family. They always sent me in to talk to the family. Oh, and so that's what I thought I was suddenly when I got this. So this was already a touchy subject. I know where that catheter is going, how close it is to my heart. And so what happened is I started filling up with blood. My veins here were taught in medical school, look for venous distension, veins engorged. And suddenly I started seeing all my veins engorged. I knew that I probably had what's called superior vena cava syndrome, SVC syndrome. I say it so quickly because in the doctor world, we all have to study it. Every med student, every doctor, you always have to cover it because it is life and death. There's blood filling up the person's head because there's something impeding blood flow. And I'm gonna be sensitive a little because Leia's a little touchy about blood and stuff.
Blood
So
and
sorry,
needles, blood and
sweetie.
needles,
Blood
blood
and
and
needles.
needles.
And my story, of course, is about a fistula, but I won't go into needles. So anyway, long story short, I was still working as a medical director, so I had my own health insurance. My health insurance dictated that to get the vascular surgery for what's called an AV fistula that I needed to keep getting plasmapheresis, that I needed to find a primary care doctor in my policy, within my healthcare company, my insurance company. I did that, and I chose somebody in town thinking this is beautiful. I'm in and I'm out. All they had to do was kind of rubber stamp the vascular surgeon's, assessment nephrology. I was on the surgery board, guys. I was on the surgery board to get this, and it was saving my life. I almost thought like, if, I found the cure because it was, so long as I was getting that treatment, which I was Tuesday and Thursday, 6 a.m. every single week for many months. And it kept me functional. So it's a miracle. Then suddenly my miracle, is I'm going to give a very short version of me attaching myself to this primary care for this simple kind of, and get to know you, rubber stamp my thing, and then hopefully we'll have a great treatment relationship as well. You're in town. This is what I'm thinking. He not only, and I went to see him, I had that syndrome I was talking about when I went to see him, and when he told me, I don't think that if you need this surgery, and I don't think that you have stiff person syndrome. I'm like, hey, you're a primary care. I said, do you have some sort of, neurology background I'm aware of? Sometimes we're many specialties. No. And then I said, well, thank God my husband was with me as a witness. And it was just lucky. And so as I'm filling up with blood, short of breath, and like literally dying in his office, he says to me, I don't think you have it. I asked him what he thought I might have then, given that all of these world experts, or, at that time had told me, we think this is what it is. And he started getting, he said fibromyalgia, which I'm a psychiatrist. Now you're entering my woods where I know more than you do, possibly, because maybe my caseload would be heavier on that than his would. And indeed, he knew no symptom, not one to name. He said he knew, he said, he was like, oh, fatigue, tender points. Thank goodness my husband, he's like, she doesn't have those. He knew me since I was 18. She doesn't have those. I want to be steamrolled. Okay. So to wrap it up, he didn't rubber stamp it. He got in the way. He told me to go home and hydrate because I was dehydrated with a head full of blood. We didn't. Thank God. I went to the ER. I called my dad. He's a doctor. We conferred. He's like, go now. And indeed, I had a big clot sitting in my heart vein. And thank goodness it came out. But they sent us anyway. So it was a big traumatic thing. I think, okay. But this is the danger of ignorance. Instead of saying, I don't know much about this, and so let me confer with my colleagues, let me read up, and then and then let me make an educated decision. I'm sorry if it's going to delay you. Nothing of sense came out of this person. And I was experiencing those symptoms of life and death when I saw him. So in front of my husband, I said, well, at least you're a primary care. This is what they deal in, vital signs. I mean, come on. So I was like, this is your bread and butter. I was like, can you at least examine me? He did. And at the end, he told me again, I'm dehydrated. Go home and drink water. So long story short, the danger of ignorance, sorry, Medi alarm, the danger of ignorance is that it could have killed me. I told my husband, sweetie, I'll never forget it. I was like, sweetie, we got home so late from the ER. We were like goners, and my scans had been sent out. I was like, if I wake up tomorrow and I still look like this, let's go to the hospital. It was all I could think to say. And I did wake up, and we did go because I got calls at 6 a.m. that come in. We read your scans. There's a clot. So this thing that has saved my life, this fistula, which is invasive, I understand it's very serious, but it keeps me going. I wouldn't be able to talk with Leia as a friend, let alone talk with the greater community that, about all these things. So there is a danger to ignorance. And I've actually never addressed that person. Close friends have said, sue him, it's just not my style. But you know what? There's some danger in ignorance. And so I'll throw it to you because life and death danger, I know you've been through it. Maybe you want to talk
That's
about something not life and death,
no,
but
mine. I mean, I have a couple actually. Two or three that I'll brush past quickly, but they're not nearly as serious as yours. But they are ignorance as well. And I mean, first thing is when I first got my lumbar puncture to get diagnosed, and I hate needles. Guys, I hate needles. It's my phobia. And
she
then I'm not
does.
a big fan of blood. But yes, all my treatments require needles. Um, so 7 times before they're able to get through. One of the times they hit a nerve, I screamed like crazy. My mom had to run in the room and they kicked her out again. And I told them if you don't get it on the seventh time, I'm done. Like it's like, and the worst part was it's not that, it's that post lumbar puncture, I got the complication. The when you can't sit straight and your
Oh,
blood
like
pressure goes
headaches
up.
that you have to see, you're right. And your
Yes,
CSF. Hmm.
yes, exactly. And the problem is that at the time, the neurologist I had, I mean, I was getting saline injections and infusions, and I was passing out. She made me wait
Hmm.
8 days to go for the blood patch. And irony of that is I go to the blood patch, but
I'm
I won't
trying
take
not
off
to
my t-shirt.
react.
I'm not taking off my t-shirt because I am petrified. And the guy's like, Leah, I have other people like, get over your fear. And then when I finally calmed down and like he pulled out my shirt and he's like, ah, who butchered your back? I was like, well, yeah,
So,
because I had 7 different places. And you know what? When he did it and he was head of, I don't know what, but he was qualified to do it. And this is what pisses me off
anesthesia,
because
probably.
yeah, exactly. But he was the head of anesthesia. When you have a
Whew.
rare case, when you don't even know what it is yet, but like my back was very stiff. I think a resident did my lumbar puncture, not even a doctor. And that's ignorance. And I mean, I know my mom fought for me at the time at the neurologist I had, and she was like,
Thank
"How,
goodness.
how dare you not do
Yeah.
the anyway, so that was one thing, but that was more about the needles and the side effects and complications. But I have one funny one actually. I spent a month in the hospital, which was last February, and I was getting before I got my fistula, and I caught pneumonia. I was getting plaques, and in between my plaques treatments, because of rituximab, I caught pneumonia, pericarditis, a muscle virus. Anyway, the whole staff on the floor, except for my neurologist, did not understand SPS. I was there for 30 days. No one took the time to understand that light triggered me, that sudden sound when they come at 5 o'clock in the morning to take your vitals,
And
that
you just
it
need
might
to Google it. We do it all the time. We have
exactly.
medical apps
So
like,
grandiose going out. There was so much noise. I fell off the chair and I bashed the back of my heels and I
oh,
hairline fractured one of my heels. And you know what? Uh, I went home because I didn't want to stay in the hospital anymore. But they all looked at me and they're like, that's your disease? I turned around and I was like, it took you 30 days and for me to hurt myself
hurt
to
yourself.
actually believe that I
Yes.
was sick and that there was something wrong with me and it was serious. And ignorance again. And I guess the
Ignorance,
last one
exactly.
I wanted to share is that one is, oh, that one I had to fight. So I'm like we talked about, my triggers is sound. One of my main one. It's better now and light has gotten worse, but at the beginning, sound was really, really bad. So the first time I did an MRI, uh, when it was at the beginning, just to confirm the diagnosis, wasn't great experience. I screamed a lot, I spasmed a lot, but nothing really happened, but it was quite aggressive. Like they had to redo a few sequences because I was moving too much and stuff. And I came out of it and I told my mom, I was like, I don't think I can do MRIs anymore. Anyway, we had to do a second MRI because a couple of months later I had headaches from IVIG and they wanted to make sure I didn't have meningitis. And I told my doctor, I was like, okay, I did it once already and I'm worse now. So what do we do? And she told me, just take a little bit of extra Valium. And I told her, no, like I know my body, like, what do we do? And she's like, take a extra Valium. So I'll never forget. I'm
Like throwing
shaking.
a firecracker on a nuke.
No,
Like, no,
I
yeah.
could not stop shaking and moving. And I screamed so much because I tore three muscles that day. My mom, who was maybe 800 meters away from the MRI, heard me scream and
Uh,
walked into the room and walked into the room and they told her, you're not allowed to walk into the MRI room. And she just walked in and she was like, I need to help my daughter, I need to help her, I need to stay with her. And she managed to calm me down to get some sequences, but I came out and they were like, well, we kind of need to do other MRIs to see if you're like you torn muscle. I was like, I don't care, I'm just going home.
no,
And it
no more
was
muscles.
horrendous. And since then I've had many different neurologists and finally I have a neurologist. And I told him when I first met him, I told him, look, there's a rule. MRIs, no, unless I'm completely sedated, because I know I can hurt myself.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and muscle tears, three muscle tears, they hurt. I mean, they were my thighs, I think two of them, and there was one behind on my back. But, and they were 45 minutes long MRI. So,
Ugh,
I told him, you want to do an MRI? No problem. It's heavy sedation because
heavy
if not, I
sedation.
won't get into the mission. And you know what? He trusts me. He does it for me. And I'm due for an MRI soon.
Oh,
And it's
sorry.
gonna be no, I mean, we're combining it with the Botox of my voice so that the sedation kind of
Two things in one.
yeah. But I'm so glad that someone listens to me because
Yes.
ignorance, ignorance.
Ignorance.
I mean, you're talking about life and death situation, which is way, way, way above what I'm saying. But I mean,
No, it's all bad.
I, I mean, I don't trust anyone in hospitals unless I
Mm.
have my real care team because no one knows and no one takes you seriously. Like no
Yeah,
one,
no one cares to know.
no.
That
I mean,
it reminds me right now of one line, the first central line, and I've come to know and love this doctor. He's fixed my fistula. Hey, whatever. You do your job. I like you. I don't need any bedside manner. But I was getting the first central line, and like I told you, to me at this point, it was still like central line. That's kind of like life and death in my experience, in medicine and being a medical resident. So I was like, okay. And I'm sitting there in the gown in this very little, like, waiting surgical room, just waiting to go into. He comes in, no look at me, the 31-year-old girl perched on the thing, like in a gown, just traumatized, that you're putting an indwelling central line catheter into. Says, you don't look stiff to me. No,
what?
look at me. You don't look stiff to me. And that is something we go through because the stiffness is, I tend to lay out these Instagrams of the layers of muscles. She hates me. I'm very geeky. And anyway, but
No.
it's so important because I'm like, don't you see why people don't understand us? There's muscles everywhere. And I know because I'm constantly going like this. I know my husband hates it, but it's like it's going over steel girders sometimes in my temples. So we have muscles everywhere. So you don't look stiff to me is like the ultimate. And you know what? It wasn't dangerous at that moment. And I have a dry humor that scares most people. They think I'm serious when I'm not. So if I can't take it, no one can. Doc to doc, dry humor. It wasn't that. It was, who's this little girl and what's she doing getting a fish? It was just a bad situation. And so I took it and I was like, that's ignorant. But the danger of ignorance wasn't there because I was about to go into that operating room, whether he liked it or not, whether he understood it or not. So I was like, whatever. Otherwise, I would have made, I had no energy, at that point. You have no energy to
Yeah.
even make the words to defend yourself. So you just take it and you're like, oh, it's like a close range rubber bullet. It doesn't kill you, but it's like, oh man. And you take those things and it's like, I took that and just tucked it away. Friends and family know because it's kind of funny that somebody could be so ignorant, because if I was sensitive or scared or more scared than I was or didn't know what a central line was, it would have hurt me bad. I would have been like really offended and more traumatized because I was in a very vulnerable state, freezing in that little gown and not knowing that day I was going to get a central line. More importantly, that I didn't shower and nobody told me you can't not shower with the central line. So I went in like not all perfect for 3 years of not showering. Anyway, so girls, people will, I think feel with that. That's terrible. We want to do hygiene as a topic. We just don't know what to call it. So if any ideas that's not as gross as hygiene, direct message us. But so I'll throw it back to
What
Leia
she
if you
means
want to
by
wrap up.
hygiene is, not taking care of yourself the way
Grooming.
you
Yeah,
used to.
beauty, grooming, exactly.
Yes, because hygiene, come on,
We
let's,
hate it. We hate it. And I say it all the time because it's great. It's not hygiene, but so we need a better word for our topic. But Leah,
but
I'll
it
throw
is
it
a
back to you
very
in terms
important
of the
topic.
danger of ignorance.
Well,
In this episode, I
ignorance,
think we've talked about the danger of ignorance in the healthcare system, but I know that it can happen between friendships, between close, family members. That is more hurtful and more deep. And so I know we can get into that another time, but
that's
what do
a
you
different topic,
think?
complete
And
different
yet it's
topic.
the same, but it's so much as
Yes.
heavy for us, right?
Ignorance is a big one, and this is why I think raising awareness is very important. And this is why I think all of us sharing our stories and our experiences is important. And we do plan in the future and the next few episodes to include other people in heart to heart to share
Absolutely.
their experiences and to talk about certain things. But
Mhm.
today, ignorance in a hospital, um, I'm so traumatized that the last time I went by surprise to hospital, I was going to the ER, and it's at the time where I started fainting and I was diagnosed later on with my sleeping disorder. But I would not let anyone touch me. And I kept saying that unless you are almost a doctor, you do not inject me. You do not touch me. You do not stay close to me. And I screamed like a crazy woman. And there were like 4 or 5 people. And I told them, I swear to God, no one touches me unless they have experience. I am not a lab rat. Because I've had so many things happen to me. I could spend hours talking about, this 21-year-old guy that was trying to get my arterial blood gas when I was in
Ooh,
hospital. And I was diagnosed
that's a
with STD.
procedure
I
that
told,
hurts anybody. It hurts.
I
It's deep.
know.
It's
And
not
I
a
told him,
venipuncture to the
I
community.
hate it. He took 8 times to get it, and I accepted it. So,
Ah,
anyways, so I was like super, super, super mean and super. And then in the end, they all looked at me and they were like, we were picked by your doctor, which is my current doctor.
oops.
And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, We are the best of the ER team." And I was like, okay." And I
Well,
felt,
you better be.
no, but I felt a bit taken aback. But this was the first time that actually someone had prepared for me, because if
Yes,
not,
thank
so
you. Prepared for me. Right.
exactly. And I think it doesn't happen often. And
No, it
I am
doesn't.
very lucky
You
with
think
all the
it's gonna, and
unluckiness.
it doesn't. Yeah.
So bottom line is ignorance is a huge topic. And I think
Guys, it is.
we need to raise awareness, more awareness. And I don't know,
Yeah.
people
And for
understanding the
and
disease
for
better.
and for it works for certainly all neurologic diseases, and then the autoimmune diseases of all natures. Anything that has mystery is going to be accompanied with less knowledge we're tested on, and less knowledge that you come across in the media that becomes general knowledge. Doctors out there, this is a message to you, med students, residents, and attendings. Don't be afraid. I don't know, but let me consult a colleague who's into this. I mean, no patient has ever gotten mad at me for even making a mistake if I caught it and called them and told them, I'm a little bit going back on my decision. No one's ever said, "Oh, you're not a good doctor because you don't know right now." There's too much for us to know right now. And so because there's good information out there, and we have, up to date and special like doctory Google things that we use that are kept up and kept up by experts, there are no reasons. And even as patients, get on your phone, look what you can, ask, because there's information out there. It's not all correct, but it is
Good.
a power. Again, the only thing we have to combat ignorance is knowledge. Because again, like we said, this is not stupidity or lack of ability to process. This is just lack of information. So if you tell somebody in a real way, backed with science, "Oh no, guys, they know this. It's pretty much known as an autoimmune disease, and antibodies are attacking self instead of not self," you can at least have something. And they might not get it still, which is psycho, but no,
Oh,
I'm sorry, but it's very bad. But and
it's okay. We'll
Leia's gonna
pretend
kill
that you
me.
didn't say that. But I
Hey,
mean,
this is
like,
a heart to heart, man.
yeah, I know. But
No, but
I think also
anyway, I'll end on
you
that
have to
before I get
advocate.
crazy.
You have to advocate for yourself. That's something I learned as
Always.
well in hospital, because even your close ones, sometimes don't understand like how psychologically ignorance can also impact you. And so, when I went all crazy in the ER, it was, in the end, I had the best team. But I came out and my parents were like, "You're really harsh out there," and sometimes being
Yeah.
harsh might give you a bad. And I was like, "I am harsh."
Reputation, or
Yes.
yeah.
And I told them, "I'm sorry. I am harsh, and I have to make sure, because so many things have happened to me that
Yes.
I can't anymore." But it happened to be that the only time I was really harsh, I didn't need to be. But put that aside.
That's
And
always
I'm
the way it goes. Always, always.
but I'm saying that ignorance is there and we need to do something about it. And I think
Yeah.
by talking more, by exposing the
Yeah.
disease more, by sharing all our stories, by
Mm-hmm.
telling guys, my doctor told me I got a fistula. My doctor told me in 2 days I wouldn't have pain. I asked
Right.
Ilea, she told me that's a lot of crap to
Hooey.
not use another word. And she told me you'll feel it for at least 3 weeks. And I went to see him 3 weeks after, and I told him, "Why did you not tell me it would hurt so much?" And he said, "Because would you have done it?" And then I said, "Good point." But I was
Ooh.
very happy that
Hard.
you told me, because I was
Yes.
kind of prepared, but at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
so confident about saying it won't hurt. And it's just the way we're treated and the way it's hard. And I think I'm gonna
It
leave it
is.
at
Leave it at
that.
that. It's hard, you guys, but we're gonna tackle it and pummel it until it gets softer. That's it. We'll
Yes.
help. Yeah, as much as we can. Thanks for listening to our stories, our most heartfelt. I didn't know some things about you. Let me just leave you guys with this. Leia tore muscles in the MRI. I am sorry. I really am. I'm sorry for that. Like, it's horrible. Nobody should have to endure that pain in such a anyway. I feel bad, and I'm sorry on behalf of the medical profession of the international world. I'm sorry. We should know
It's
better.
okay. But it taught me to stand up for myself and ask for, if the doctor wants to do an exam, they have to do it my way. And if it's not okay,
Right.
then we don't do the exam,
Right.
because I can't hurt myself. I know I will.
It's a
So
risk, yeah.
so guys, I'm
Yeah,
having
thank
MRI
you.
very soon. wish me luck. And my doctor is sedating me, so and
Amen. I love
and
this doctor.
till the next one. Thank you, Ilea. This was an interesting. This was a and this we laughed a
You
lot,
guys
and
are
I think
probably gonna get in trouble for using like crazy, bad terms. Don't hate me. I got passionate.
no,
But
but
yeah,
I was
so
just
I
we
was
were
so glad to
deflecting
talk
with
about
humor.
this.
We were deflecting with humor a little bit,
We
but at
were
the end
because
of the
we're
day,
hurt,
yes, and that's what I want to finish on. We are constantly hurting, and
hurting.
we hurt. So we need the ignorance part is very important to highlight
Yes, it is.
and not to deflect with humor like we just did. I mean, we
Right.
did because we just shared our stories and
Because it's my only coping mechanism. Coping
also,
mechanisms is
but I
something
mean,
else we're going to
we
talk about.
slowly, and just ignorance is part of our life, and we can change the world, but we can start making little changes, and I think that's a
That's a
good
good
way to
point.
end it.
Yeah. Feel
Well, till the
better.
next time.
And all of you guys feel better and healthy until the next time.